Well, everyone, we're here to celebrate something good, but unfortunately, I got to first just break with the program for a moment and talk about something very sad that happened earlier today in our city. And this is some really tragic news that happened this morning. An off-duty NYPD officer was driving home from work. He was killed in a two-vehicle crash in the North Bronx. This was a collision with a city vehicle, and it's a horrible tragedy. We lost a good young man who was serving this city and protecting us all. He was just on his way home, and this horrible tragedy occurred. I want to be clear that we are not yet divulging the name because family members have not all been notified. So I'm going to ask you, even though I can't give you the name at this moment, I'm going to ask you to hold this family in your hearts, to have this family in your prayers. They're going to be going through a lot, having lost this good young man. And I'd like to ask, and I'll just say, there will be a full investigation. Obviously, we take this tragedy very seriously. We want to know exactly what happened. As we have more information, we're going to put it out to the public. But right now, even though I am unfortunately not in a position to give you the name, I want you to think about this young man and think about his family, and I'd like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now I want to turn to Linda Drake. Linda, would you come forward, and we're going to start the program now. Thank you. Let's welcome Linda, everybody.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Drake. I want to welcome you, each and every one of you, to Tres Puentes. Before I start, I would like to commend the staff of Tres Puentes, the maintenance staff, and the security team. They all work, they are exceptional. I grew up in Anisha. My parents lived in Anisha for over 40 years. I worked in pre-K with kindergartners for 25 years. I enjoyed my work, and I kept an open eye on certain development of the children to teach them self-respect and how to respect others. When I moved to Tres Puentes, I was extremely happy because this is an amazing apartment, amazing building, amazing staff. I just love it. It feels like I'm living in the mayor's mansion here. When I leave the apartment, I go out and I talk to everyone in the neighborhood. We have the library is 2 blocks away. UPS, if you want to send a box. Local supermarkets, I'm sorry, nervous. Local supermarkets in the area, fruit stands. And for the first time, I just went to St. Jerome's over to light a candle. And this church is so beautiful. All of this in this neighborhood. I mean, I just love it. Now, after working so long in, 25 years, and I feel the community is giving back to me by giving me this beautiful apartment. Every time I walk in my door, I have to pinch myself. Is it me? Is it me? But I'm truly enjoying it, and I'm truly enjoying my neighbors, our neighbors and friends. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Mayor, Bill de Blasio.
Great job. Thank you, Linda. Linda, that was beautiful, and I love your enthusiasm. I love how happy you are and to share such an amazing place with your neighbors. But what I especially love is, first of all, I love anyone who taught our youngest kids, because pre-K, that's my heart, to make sure our kids get the right start. So 25 years of helping our kids off on the right track. Let's thank her for that. And I also think that Linda's story helps us understand why we have devoted so much time, so much energy, so much money to getting people affordable housing, people who have been the rock of the community, people who have contributed so much to New York City, who have made New York City so great. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because of hardworking New Yorkers in every community who taught our kids, took care of the people, helped make our neighborhoods strong, even in tough times. Isn't it right that the people contributed so much now get a place to live that they deserve? Isn't that right? It's also about making sure that the people who made this city great, the people who went through the tough times, finally benefit when times have gotten better. There's a lot of people in neighborhoods around this city, and this is one of them, that really struggled through some very tough years. And they didn't run. They stood and fought. They stood and committed themselves to their neighborhoods. And there is real justice when the people who did those noble things get to benefit. And there is an injustice when people who went through the tough, tough times then see prosperity and find themselves displaced and sent away from their own neighborhood. We don't accept that. We believe we can do something really, really significant to help people stay in neighborhoods, especially the places that struggled and suffered and now finally are seeing a better day. So Linda's example really speaks to everything we're doing. And you're seeing here at Tres Puentes this bigger vision come to life. 300 apartments, either built new or being preserved. That means helping the people who live in them to stay there long term at affordable rent. That's 300 apartments, but what it really means in human terms for hundreds and hundreds of New Yorkers, it's a dream come true. Just like Linda said, it means you know what your life's going to be like. You know you have something you can depend on. People really work hard in the city, and they struggle to make ends meet, but imagine when you finally get to that day where you have something you can depend on, that you can believe in, and the quality of life you deserve. That's what this whole vision has been about. Now, we have something to celebrate, and we're here with some of the people who really should be very, very proud of this moment, because I have urged my team to believe we can always go farther. And I've urged my team to think like the champions they are and always look to set the next record. And they actually have gone farther than I think anyone thought possible in terms of creating and preserving affordable housing. They have broken record after record, gone farther and farther, and every time they aim higher, more and more everyday New Yorkers benefit. So we're here to say that in the year 2018, we have set an all-time record. And listen to this number, it's amazing. 34,000 apartments built or preserved in the year 2018 that are affordable to everyday New Yorkers. 34,000 apartments. There's a lot of great people who participated in this success. I'll name the names of the folks who have led the way, but they have hundreds of people behind them in their agencies and then all of their partners out in communities that have made such a difference. You're going to hear from Deputy Mayor Alicia Glenn in a moment, and she has been the energy source. She's been the power plant, the focused person who has led this effort to make sure that we kept moving forward and aimed higher and higher and higher. I also want to thank, for her extraordinary work, our Commissioner for the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, Maria Torres Springer. Thank you so much to you and your whole team. And I think we all agree these things wouldn't happen if someone didn't make sure the money showed up in time and that the deals came together and that everything was right. And I want to thank the President of the Housing Development Corporation, Eric Enderlin, to you and your whole team for the extraordinary work you've done. I also want to thank everyone who works here in this amazing facility and this great organization, and our host, Paul Freitag, who I've known a long, long time. Paul, Executive Director of the West Side Federation for Senior and Supportive Housing. Thank you to you and your team for all the good housing you've created. So I'm going to say this very quickly. The the reality in 2014, so I took office just over 5 years ago, and I'll tell you, when you run for mayor, you get the most extraordinary snapshot of what people are feeling in this town. And I remember a number of times, and Charlene feels this too, that we had people come up to us and just grabbing us by the arm, like with passion, saying, I can't afford to live here anymore. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in my neighborhood. I feel like I'm going to be displaced. And that fear, and we always have seen challenges in this town, and certainly there's been times when housing was too expensive, but something happened in recent years that was unlike anything we had seen previously. And that urgency, that need was greater than ever before. It was clear we had to do something radical. We could not accept the status quo. We had to do something very different. And we started out with a vision to build and preserve 200,000 apartments, 200,000 affordable apartments, enough for 400 or 500,000 New Yorkers. And that, at the time, I talked to some experts in the field, and I said, hey, we got this plan, and it's great, and look at this, we can do this, I know we can do it. And I remember one very eminent expert said to me, Bill, that's a really noble plan, but it's this close to insane. And he said it with a straight face. He said, this close to insane. There's no way to do 200,000 apartments. As good as the intention is, it cannot be done. Well, this expert and other experts didn't know Alicia Glenn, and didn't know Maria, didn't know Eric, didn't know their teams, didn't know they could do things that had never been done before. And so we got to 2017, and the plan was going better than ever. It was ahead of schedule, it was on budget, and we said the need is just so great out there. What if we aimed even higher? Is it possible to aim even higher? And the team went back to the drawing board, and they came back and said, we can do 300,000 apartments. 300,000 apartments, enough for almost 700,000 New Yorkers. That's getting close to 1 in 10 New Yorkers. I mean, this is just a staggering, staggering goal. But guess what? They're actually doing it. And they're making it work. And each year gets better than the next. 34,000 apartments. What does that mean? It means 85,000 New Yorkers will have a place they can afford. 85,000 people. I'm going to give you an example that Bronxites will appreciate. 85,000 people is almost the entire population of Mott Haven and Melrose combined. So imagine those two neighborhoods if every single human being had affordable housing. That's the extent of what is being achieved here just in 1 year's time, and there's more to come. So it's amazing. It is the best way to keep this a city for everyone. Number one expense in our lives is housing. If housing's affordable, everything else becomes possible. If we want a city for everyone, we want a city that looks like the New York we've always known and loved, we have to do this. If we want to make sure people get to be in the neighborhoods that they protected, that they strengthened, that they saw through the tough times, we have to make sure people are not displaced. This is the way we do it. And I want to say one other thing. We know that building is a part of the solution. Preserving and subsidizing apartments so people can stay in them is a part of the solution. But we also have to take on the bad landlords, and that's not the majority, but it's still too many. The bad landlords who unfortunately see a chance for greater profit and decide they are going to kick people out so they can jack up the rent. I don't know how any human being decides to put out hardworking, everyday New Yorkers so they can make more money. But that's what happens too often in the city. So we announced last week in the State of the City address the new mayor's office to protect tenants, which will have a lot of stronger tools to work with, including the notion that if a bad landlord does not cease and desist, if we tell them, stop doing what you're doing to your tenants, back off, and they don't do it, we're going to fine them, we're going to penalize them. If that doesn't work, with the help of the City Council, we will have the power to take their building away and give it to a nonprofit like this that actually wants to help people. So we all know we are the greatest city in the world. Show of hands, who thinks we're the greatest city in the world? It is unanimous. But we have to be the fairest city too. We have to make sure we're a city for everyone. And that's what today is all about. A few words in Spanish. Estamos trabajando cada día para asegurar que los neoyorquinos puedan vivir en la ciudad que aman. hemos superado nuestras marcas al construir o preservar más de 34,000 unidades de vivienda asequible en un solo año. Cada una de esas viviendas nos acerca más a nuestra meta de ser la ciudad grande, más justa del país, to be the fairest big city in America. Now I have the great, great pleasure of introducing the leader of this effort, and she is a force of nature. She does not have an off switch. And that is a very good thing for New Yorkers who have benefited from all of this extraordinary progress. We said a little while ago that after 5 extraordinarily successful years, our deputy mayor would be moving on to other good works, but for the last half-decade, she's made extraordinary contributions to this city. And this is a moment of triumph that we all get to savor with her. Deputy Mayor Alicia Glenn.
Wow. God, I hate going after you. That's just so rough. And my Spanish is terrible, so I'm not even going to try. But buenos dias, everybody. Thank you so much. And Linda, I wish I had known you when my kids were in preschool, because you must have been pretty great for those New Yorkers. And again, as a born and bred New Yorker and an Upper West Sider, I'm very happy to see the West Side contributing more and more to the rest of the city through the great work of Wishfish and Puentes. As the mayor said, look, in 2014, when we came to office, we set out to build the biggest affordable housing machine New York City has ever seen. And we did that as part of a broader economic strategy, right? To build an economy that works for everyone, we needed to address this growing affordability crisis and make sure that we have housing that also works for everyone. And that is not a simple proposition, as the mayor talked about the experts. It's a recipe that requires many, many ingredients and a lot of expertise to make it work, and to make it work at a scale that will actually have impact, that will actually make a difference. And when we talk about making an impact in New York City, we're talking about big and bold, right? Nothing small will do for our city. And that's why we said that we would build or preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing, enough for 500,000 New Yorkers. That's big and bold. But if that weren't enough, this guy took us aside and said, you know what, not good enough. We need to do better for our city. And he challenged us in 2017 to go even further and to raise those goals to 300,000 units over 12 years. Can I just put that into context for people? Recently, I read that San Francisco is aiming to do 10,000 units over 5 years. In LA, they're aiming for 15,000. And Dallas is going to try to do 20,000 over 3 years. Guess what? Here in New York City, we did more than 34,000 units in 1 year. So, you know, that's the greatest city in the world right there for you. So what was once considered undoable or impossible, we've made it possible. And we've done it by leveraging our resources more effectively, by firing on all cylinders, and by not shying away from tackling big issues and powerful constituencies. And that's really thanks to Mayor de Blasio's vision and the housing machine we have built. And we've built something that is going to permanently change the course of housing, not just in New York City, but I think really set a national standard. All those other cities better start thinking big as well, because this is a national problem facing all of us. So how did we do it? A little bit of the, sort of boring details behind the numbers, but they're important because they're lessons to learn. We did this with some key principles to guide us. We wanted to make sure that as the city was changing, the composition of the city, we expanded the range of the people who we serve. We need to serve not just the lowest income New Yorkers, but people across the income spectrum. The middle class, retired people, entry-level workers who want to stay and raise a family here. Everyone deserves an affordable place to live in New York City. We wanted to consider entire neighborhoods when we think about where we're going to build more housing, right? And our planning process starts with community input. We need to listen to what communities need, and then we need to commit to real-time investments to make those neighborhoods more livable, more New York, more what they are, more what you talked about, what's so great about your neighborhood. The third thing we said is, Economic diversity has to be a cornerstone of everything we're doing in housing. So if we're going to rezone a neighborhood or a big site so that we can build more housing for New Yorkers, we're not just building luxury high-rises. People talk a lot about mixed income, but we're going to make sure that as our city grows, it grows for everyone, and there's affordable housing in every single neighborhood in New York City. We also said to ourselves, we have to get better at what we do. We've got to leverage our tools. We've got to figure out how to do this more effectively. That means not putting too much money into deals. It means making sure our tax policy works with our zoning and land use policy. It means making sure that every time we have a chance to build affordable housing on public sites, we do it. That's really important. We got to get the most bang for our collective buck. And finally, we have to protect what we've done before and lock in affordability in changing neighborhoods. Because we talk a lot about the numbers, but this is not just a numbers game. It's a people project, right? We need to focus just as much on protecting and preserving existing affordable housing as we do to producing new units. Families who have lived in New York City, often when it was not as prosperous and fabulous and cool as it is now, deserve to stay not only in the city they love, but to help us to define the city we all love. So as we celebrate the numbers and milestones reached here today, what we're really celebrating is that after 5 years, this crazy recipe is finally really working. And it's working all across the city. A few examples. At Brooklyn Bridge Park, we fought against some really powerful opponents to bring affordable housing to one of the highest income, most desirable neighborhoods in the city because it was a right thing to do on public property. And the result? 100 units of housing where home health care aides, teachers, uniformed service workers, etc., the people who make our city run and work, get to live in Brooklyn Bridge Park. We didn't just talk about fixing tax policy. We fought and we won real reform in Albany on 421A. And that also now means more affordable units for New Yorkers. Over 1,100 units this year alone, often where there is no affordable housing. Against vocal opposition from real estate developers and investors who literally said we would destroy the housing market. We made mandatory inclusionary housing the law. And we are starting to see the results. This year alone, we created almost 700 permanently affordable units. And by the way, I don't see no housing being built in this town. There's a crane on every block. So we proved them wrong. We can build permanently affordable housing for New Yorkers, and we're going to continue to do it. We said we would house more of our seniors, all vulnerable, and our lowest income New Yorkers than ever before. And we did it while still getting a better deal for taxpayers. We're leveraging more money than before, way more than 5 years ago, and still serving lower income folks. And we said we wouldn't just stand by and watch affordable housing become unaffordable. We would get out in front of the problem. And we did. Over the past 5 years, this is unbelievable, guys. Over the past 5 years alone, we have preserved more than half of the city's entire Mitchell-Lama portfolio. That is unbelievable. That's 25,000 units of affordable housing people were writing off. They were like, Mitchell-Lama is dead. But it ain't, not with this gang. And here at Puentes, we're doing the same thing. We can build and we can preserve at the same time. This is exactly what we came here to do. One final note. A lot of people talk about rezonings and what that means for neighborhoods. Well, I'm going to give you an example of what rezoning means for neighborhoods. In downtown Far Rockaway, we rezoned it so that we could spur more housing. And by doing that, we enabled a vacant strip mall with an enormous parking lot that had laid fallow for decades and was a blight on the neighborhood. And it was only 1 block away from the subway, and they had a parking lot for 1,000 cars. And it was just a wreck of a site in the middle of downtown Far Rockaway. You know what's happening there now? 1,700 units of desperately needed affordable housing are being developed. And we did it while we made good on the community's ask that we put money into local schools, parks, and roads. This is what's happening in real time under this plan. So, many of you may not get this, but this sort of resonates. If you are a fan of the Great British Bake Off, a very fun show to watch, I think it is fair to say that our housing recipe has produced a good bake. It's an unbelievable cake, and we have done unbelievable amounts of work. And I couldn't be more grateful to Mayor de Blasio, to unbelievably fabulous Maria Torres-Springer, Eric Enderlin, and really to all the other people who make this work possible, not just at Housing Preservation Development, Housing Development Corporation, but also the folks at City Planning and EDC, and the people at DEP, and the people at Sanitation, everybody who makes the city work for all New Yorkers. So we came to do an incredible job to make a growing city, also an affordable city. and we've proven that we can do it. Thank you very much.
Alicia, thank you for all you have achieved. Thank you for those very, I think, helpful, informative remarks that really gave us all the big picture. I have no idea what the Great British Bake Off is, so I'm not sure that helps you make your point, but everything else made sense. But here's what really makes sense as we conclude. And everyone, look at that sign. I think it literally says everything we have been devoting ourselves to for the last half decade in this town, a city you can afford, a city for everyone. So I want to ask everyone, do you believe every New Yorker deserves a city they can afford? Yes. Do you believe in that? Yes. Well, that's what we're going to do. Thank you, everybody.